This might be the first and last time that we talk about this topic on this channel, as we're talking Giannis trade on Celtics Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Tyler Smith. As an NBA insider went on ESPN and basically said a trade between the Celtics and Bucks for the Greek Freak is semi-realistic, and we're going to discuss the possibility of making that trade on today's show. But before we get into that, guys, I decided to challenge the folks over at Warriors Today here at Chat Sports to an offseason sub-battle, because guess what? The Warriors are a competitor to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo as well, so we want to beat them on the court and off the court. Let's sub more than them this offseason, build a bigger audience. We are a little bit behind right now because their season ended a little bit earlier than the C's did, so go down below and hit that big red sub button if you want to be tapped into all the Celtics offseason content. All right, let's talk about this quote from Brian Windhorst when he went on Get Up and said, "I think you have to look at the teams that can make a trade for Giannis that the Bucks would accept, and on the other side of the trade would have a contending team. So Boston would be on that list." And he later went on to say, "I think New York would be on that list as well." We'll talk about that a little bit later. But he did preface this, Brian Windhorst went on a Get Up and prefaced this statement by saying, if Giannis has control in any trade scenario. Now, he is not yet asked out of Milwaukee, so there is no real traction on a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade at this point. But if and when that time comes, teams are purportedly prepping to make offers for Giannis right now. Expect Brad Stevens to be in the mix. And Giannis should want to stay in the East. If he has control and the Milwaukee Bucks cater to him, sending him to a preferred destination, Giannis should want to stay in the Eastern Conference. The West is really an absolute gauntlet right now, and you could have a pretty solid roster and a good season and end up only winning 40 to 45 games and ending up being in the play-in tournament. Giannis, does he really want to go do that, where he is, kind of inching closer and closer to the tail end of his prime, still putting up monster numbers, but does he want something where it's an absolute gauntlet to get to the finals and then you're all gassed out? Why not just stay in the Eastern Conference that is totally wide open for the foreseeable future that it seems, and kind of be a perennial contender year in and year out? More from Windhorst here on Giannis potentially being traded to the East. He said there's some difficulties when you talk about aprons and second apron teams. Obviously, New York and Boston are both high salary rosters trying to make trades, and that's a reality. But there are some teams in the Eastern Conference you could construct an ability to get this done. And obviously, New York and Boston are at the top of that list as teams that can probably remain a contender in the East, especially after making a Giannis trade and giving up whatever means you need to give up to make it happen. Now, Brian Windhorst, with these quotes, he could just be blowing a bunch of early offseason smoke here. It's the middle of May. But to be fair, we did hear from multiple NBA insiders that this is going to be a crazy offseason this summer. Windhorst included saying that, and his buddy over at ESPN, Shams Charania, also said that this could be the most craziest offseason ever. And including that statement, he said Boston will have a much different roster heading into 2025. So it's not completely out of the picture to be speculating on a Giannis trade for the C's. Shams said the Celtics are going to make trades this offseason. Is it going to be one as seismic as one for Giannis Antetokounmpo? I mean, if he's on the block, you have to expect Brad Stevens, with as smart of a basketball mind as he is, and a guy who I'm sure has a whole heck of a lot of common sense, to at least inquire about what it would take to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, a top 3 player in this league coming to Boston. I'm sure he would love to have that, especially as an anchor for a roster that has a lot of uncertainty moving forward, although it has some great complementary pieces. With Jason Tatum's injury, we don't know what this team is going to look like moving forward, and Giannis could step in and be the new number one for at least next season, potentially, and beyond. But the next question you have to ask yourself is, what does Milwaukee want for Giannis? What is the path that they're looking to go down as a franchise after trading a franchise icon like Antetokounmpo? Do they want to completely blow everything up and go into tank mode and get as many draft selections and high priority draft selections as possible? Then maybe they look somewhere else than Boston. But if they want a win now piece and a bunch of draft picks, maybe Boston's a team that they end up looking at as a potential partner. But on Boston's front office side, because that's what we have to focus on right here, item number one is, if they want to make a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, the Boston Celtics have to be willing to trade Jaylen Brown. I think whether or not the Bucks want to blow up their roster and completely tank or still try to contend in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics wouldn't be a team that could be a trade partner for them and have as many valuable assets if they were trying to go down the road of tanking and just playing for the future. The Celtics don't have as many premium draft assets, and yeah, they have some expiring deals, but Milwaukee, they don't have some draft assets of their own. Like, they need to get some outside things, like from a team like the Thunder or something like that, who have other teams' draft picks, like the Clippers way down the line, or like the Sixers draft picks in a few years. Maybe the Heat. Like, there are some other teams that more suited to have better draft selections than the Celtics that Giannis could potentially be traded to. But the Celtics have to focus on trading Jaylen Brown if this is ever going to be possible. It's not going to be a situation where Milwaukee's going to take Kristaps, Porzingis, and a Jrue Holiday. Like, and also at the same time, like, the Celtics can't aggregate contracts at this point right now, so they probably have to deal Porzingis and Holiday away before they even make this deal. And then Brown's obviously your only valuable asset going back. I mean, Derek White's not going to get a deal as the centerpiece done for Giannis. And the issue again arises with the fact that Jaylen Brown for Giannis straight up at this point does not free up money. So the Celtics, like I said, are going to have to get under the second apron potentially, move some contracts around, free up some more money before making a Giannis trade. I mean, the question at the top of everything is, are they willing to do it? That's like, we don't know that. Hopefully these rumors will continue to swirl, and we'll get a clearer picture on what that answer is. But we know, at least for now, the Celtics and Jaylen Brown aren't trending towards a breakup. Like, JB got a Supermax extension from this franchise. He's been with them his entire career, won a Finals MVP, is perennially an all-star, all-NBA level player, and he has a carved-out role as the 1A, 1B on this Boston Celtics team. And especially next season, he looks to be the franchise centerpiece with Tatum sidelined for the entire season. And Jaylen Brown had a little pop-up event this past weekend, and he talked about his love for the city of Boston and playing for the Celtics. He said this: "Boston is home. I've been here for 10 years of my life. Even though sometimes online or in the media there's a lot of noise, when you get out in the community, there's a lot of love and genuine connections, and I get to see that today." And like, Jaylen Brown, like, yeah, he's been a big factor of the Boston community. He also said that he's probably going to be spending his entire summer in Boston doing things like different workshops at MIT and keynotes there and whatnot. So like, he's going to be a part of the Boston community, and doesn't look like he's going to be getting moved anytime soon. But if the opportunity for a Giannis trade arises, maybe that ends up going differently as far as the front office perspective. But Brown has also talked about winning next season as well as the franchise centerpiece. He said this later on in the little interview with the News. He said, "You should expect for me to come out and leave my heart out on the floor every single night next year. Expect me to just continue to improve and just look forward to taking matters into my own hands." That's what he's going to do. He's going to be the superstar in Boston, trying to get them contending for another championship next season. And look, I have faith in JB. It seems like the front office is on the same page as well. Brad Stevens had great things to say about Jaylen Brown as far as his recovery from the injury that he suffered and was playing through this past postseason, and talked about how he is going to be a big factor of the Celtics roster moving forward. Brad said this in his exit interview after the season was over. He said, "The reality is we have a ton of good players and everyone leans on. That said, Jaylen and Jason have gotten the majority of attention because of how good they are. And I have full faith that any game that you have those guys out on the court, or one of those guys on the court, you have a great shot. And so I have full faith in Jaylen." Do you guys have full faith in Jaylen, or would you trade him for Giannis Antetokounmpo? And I think two things can be true, but take this one in a vacuum for me in the comment section right now. Would you trade Jaylen Brown for Giannis? Type Y for yes, type N for no. I'm trying to hear from the Green Teamers on whether or not you would trade 7 for the Greek Freak. On the flip side, yes, it seems like Jaylen Brown is going to be a factor moving forward, and granted, this was before he won Finals MVP with this franchise, the Celtics were willing to trade Jaylen Brown a couple of seasons ago after he'd already made the Finals as a second option on this team back in 2022 for Kevin Durant. And they weren't only open to trading Jaylen Brown for KD. They were also including Derek White in the package right now. So what tells you that the Celtics would be totally dismissive of a just Jaylen Brown for Giannis trade? Derek White was a huge factor of the title run back in 2022, even though he was only on the team for a short time to that point. Yeah, he probably wouldn't be included in that deal now for Giannis, but would the Celtics consider JB for the Greek Freak straight up? You got to think that they probably would consider it. And John Corrales said that they could make the trade. He was kind of going like this whole podcast that he had on Locked On Celtics. He was talking about how he just doubts that this is a possibility, to be quite honest, but was referencing the Windhorst quote as well. He also said, I wouldn't rule it out. Like, it's not a complete nothing burger that we can't just speculate on for at least the early parts of this offseason. And who knows, with the NBA draft coming up and a lot of teams that could be looking to trade for Giannis, having premium draft selections this offseason, like this thing could go down before the draft ends up happening. So should the Celtics trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo? I don't have to tell you guys that he is an unbelievable basketball player. Like, I don't have to sit here and sell you guys on a multi-time MVP, a NBA champion, Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, perennial all-defensive first team, like 30 and 10 automatic every single night. Like, I don't have to convince you guys that Giannis is a good player. So yes, absolutely the Celtics should go out there and trade for him. Brad Stevens, I think he's a smart guy, and everybody knows that at this point with the moves that he's made and the rosters that he's constructed. Like, he probably knows that Giannis is a really, really good basketball player as well. 30 points and 11 plus rebounds on 60% from the field over the last 2 seasons. Those stat lines have never been done before in history, and Giannis just did them in back-to-back seasons. Yeah, I'm sure Brad knows this guy's a really, really good basketball player and can be the anchor of a Celtics team that, doesn't have Jason Tatum next year and could still make a run at the NBA Finals. But before anything like this goes down, the Celtics will have to get under the second apron beforehand, because it has to be a complete there's so many financial restrictions. Thank you, CJ McCollum, for the second apron. There's so many financial restrictions about it, with the Celtics paying out of the ass right now for their roster. Like, you have to take complete 100% back and forth trade values in a deal. So like it can't be something where you're $1 million off. So Giannis and Jaylen Brown can't go in a 1-for-1 trade at this point. The Celtics have to move Jrue Holiday. They have to move Kristaps, Porzingis, and some of these big contracts away from the team before you even talk about a Giannis trade. So this is going to happen anytime soon. Like, things are going to have to start moving. And when you look at where Giannis could be traded, as a referencing the Knicks again, this offseason in the Eastern Conference per se, because the best options for Giannis to at least be on the best overall rosters, maybe not to have the best chance at winning a championship, do come in the Western Conference. When you talk about the Rockets, when you talk about the Spurs, when you talk about even the Thunder, who knows, if they win the title, I doubt they break things up, but they have all the assets in the world to go out there and trade for Giannis. So, like, those rosters would be better, but if he wants to really guarantee himself a spot at contending, like, these are some teams that he could go out there and go. Maybe not the Brooklyn Nets, but they've long been rumored to be interested in Giannis, and they have a ton of money. They could do another thing where they can construct a KD, Kyrie pairing up again in Brooklyn. But in Boston, he would have Tatum, obviously not next season, but the one after, and hopefully many seasons to come. Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and whoever you get back in a potential deal for Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday. I'm sure Brad's going to make some sound decisions when it comes to dealing those guys away, so you're going to have a pretty solid roster in place. If you get traded to the Knicks, I would assume you have Jalen Brunson in town. I mean, that duo is as good as it gets in the NBA, and I'm sure you have some combo of Karl-Anthony Towns or OG Anunoby. I would assume Mikal Bridges gets dealt away in this deal, potentially Josh Hart as well. So I'd assume you have at least 2 of those 3 players in town in New York. You can easily stack that core up against Boston. It would just come down to preference at whatever package they get back at that point. And then, I mean, fantasy world, Brooklyn Nets, maybe Giannis could convince somebody to come over there. And then Damian Lillard, Kyle Kuzma, and Kevin Porter Jr. would be the core that he's going back to. Obviously, Milwaukee does not want to trade Giannis, and they're trying to convince him to stay because they think that this core could contend in the East, and they're saying that Doc Rivers is a reason that he should just stick around. I mean, they're not really great salesmen over there in Milwaukee, but who knows? Maybe they can convince him because he's been there for so long. But what does the Celtics trade idea look like with the Bucks? Well, it's pretty simple. It's 1-for-1 after you get under the second apron. Giannis comes to town for Jaylen Brown, along with 3 unprotected first-round picks. And that's a lot to be sending away to Milwaukee, man. When you think about this, like, yes, Giannis is way better than Jaylen Brown, but he's also 4 years older, or I mean, I guess 3.5 years older. Giannis turns 31 this fall, or this winter, excuse me, in December. So, like, yeah, there's a couple, like, there's almost an entire contract in age difference. And Giannis has not played in the playoffs at 100% health over the past few seasons. Meanwhile, Jaylen Brown has done exactly that, although we know he did play on the torn meniscus, partially torn meniscus this postseason. Would you accept this deal where Boston sends 3 unprotected firsts, 28th this year, 2030? Oh, yeah, and actually, it's not 3 unprotected, but it's a 2031 first-round pick swap where, down the line, that's going to be Giannis in his late 30s, Tatum in his mid to late 30s as well. So those could be very valuable picks down the line. Helps Milwaukee at this point contend with JB as their centerpiece and get some future draft capital down the line. Would you make it? A for accept, D for decline? Let me know what you think down in the comments section. I would accept the deal, to be honest with you guys. Like, assuming that Brad Stevens cooks and makes good deals beforehand, getting under the second apron and getting some value back to kind of build some complementary pieces around the star duo of Jason Tatum and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, at the end of the day, like, it's, again, 2 Supermax contracts on your roster, which it's going to be very hard to build the best version of yourselves with those type of, financial constraints. But at the end of the day, Tatum and Giannis, that would be the best duo in the NBA, not even close. And this all comes down to me, believing in Brad Stevens. Like, if Brad thinks that trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo is a good move, then so do I. He hasn't failed me to this point. Yeah, you could say the Jrue Holiday contract is a misstep, but at the end of the day, he's going to move it and get value back this summer. I believe in Brad Stevens, and if he thinks that a Giannis trade is what makes this team a contender for years to come, better than it is right now, then I'm all for it. So I'd accept that, and if you would too, then maybe you agree with me, maybe you like this show. Subscribe to the channel and lock us in for all your Celtics content all offseason long. They're going to be making a bunch of deals. Shams was not BSing with that quote, even though Windy might have been with this Giannis trade stuff. So subscribe. If anything happens, we'll bring you the latest right here at Celtics Today. Hit that big red sub button. We'll see you guys on the next one. And as always, let's go C's.